Welcome to Make It with NPL, and we're here for another session of how to play Dungeons and Dragons at home. My name is Kristi Cates. With me is Julia Kozak-Callaghan and Jane Jankowski. And we're going to tell you a little bit more in depth about some gameplay, how to be the Dungeon Master, and playing online. So I'm going to start us off with a little bit about what a Dungeon Master is. So you want to be a Dungeon Master, or maybe no one else in your group wants to be the Dungeon Master and you've been assigned that role as default. But it can be a lot of fun. You will have a very unique role in the game, and you're going to experience it a lot different from everyone else. There will be a little bit more work before sessions as you plan things out for your players, but it can be really, really fun to run a session that everyone loves and gets excited to come back for the next one. So one thing to keep in mind as you're getting ready to play is, have you played any kind of tabletop role-playing game before, or have you seen or listened to others playing? If you haven't, if everyone in your group is new to this and you're starting from the same square, I would recommend looking for some actual play games that you can watch or listen to. There are a ton out there. There are podcasts, there are video series on YouTube. A couple of the big ones are Critical Role, which you can listen to as a podcast or watch the videos on YouTube. Or there's also a podcast called The Adventure Zone, which is a lot of fun. It is three brothers and their dad playing Dungeons and Dragons. So these are, and lots of others, are good options to just maybe listen to a couple of episodes and see how it goes. One thing you want to keep in mind when you're doing something like this is that usually you are listening to or watching Dungeon Masters who have years of experience. In the case of Critical Role, pretty much everyone playing is a professional voice actor. So don't assume that if your game doesn't look exactly like theirs, you are a failure. But watching them play will help you learn to make a game flow better and encourage your players and see exactly what kind of role a DM can fill. So if you get a little bit of background knowledge, then you can work on your specific skills that you will want to develop as a DM. You don't need to be an expert on the rules. You can get copies of the player's handbook. There's also a handbook specifically for the Dungeon Master, but you do need to be familiar with the basics and be prepared for what your players are going to throw at you. You can also, have everything on hand as reference as you play. Make sure to look at the chapters that are focusing on character creation, on adventuring, running the campaign itself, combat, and spellcasting, anything that's a little heavier on the rules. You might even try doing some practice combats with characters that you create yourself, just to get a feel for how it could go. Another book that you might want to check out is the Monster Manual. This is the guide to all of the pre-made creatures and monsters that exist in the Dungeons and Dragons world. These will give you stat blocks that will tell you exactly, how tough a monster is, what their attacks are, how they will defend themselves. So this can be useful, especially if you're building an adventure from scratch. At least you can refer to these tables and have some statistics for your monsters. You can bookmark the pages you'll be using ahead of time. I didn't bring it over here with me, but I have a copy of the campaign I'm running right now, and it is just covered in bookmarks. One advice on the rules, though, there are a lot of them. It is overwhelming, especially if you're a first-time Dungeon Master. So, and no one in your group has played before either. So if you're brand new to this, each player needs to take some responsibility for learning at least the basic rules, for knowing a little bit about combat and how their character works and their attacks and spells. Things are going to run a lot more smoothly if everyone at least understands a little bit of the rules. However, rules are made to be broken, especially in Dungeons and Dragons. And if you don't know the answer for something without a lot of poring over the books and you're in the moment of the game, you're the Dungeon Master. You have the power. You can make a call here. And so just keep in mind, and again, in a lot of these famous actual play podcasts and shows, there's fudging of the rules when it works for the game. So sometimes one of your characters may do something awesome and the rule book is going to say that's not allowed, and you can just hand wave it and say, yeah, you can do that because it's really cool. So know the rules. Have the books on hand if you can, to refer to if you need to, but don't be afraid of bending them a little bit.
Okay.
So you know the rules, you know a little bit about dungeon mastering, but how do you actually run the game? We're going to turn it over to Julia now, and she's going to tell you a little bit more about that aspect.
Okay, thanks, Kristi. So, I mean, after you've got kind of a basic idea of the rules and you figured out who's going to be in your group, you have to decide what adventure you're going to play. And that actually can sometimes be one of the hardest parts, is picking an adventure. Because there's so many options. You know, we are talking mostly about Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition here. So I'm going to give a specific recommendation of Lost Mines of Phandelver as your first starter adventure, especially if your whole group is brand new, because it's written specifically for brand new players and has a lot of helpful instruction on actually running the game. If you aren't interested in that one for whatever reason, I would still recommend starting with a pre-made module because it cuts down on a lot of the prep work that you have to do for each session. I know some people come to the role of Dungeon Master and they have this, you know, complete like homebrew world built up in their heads and are just itching to like get it out and play a game in there. And, you know, if that is the kind of thing that you want to do with your game, you certainly can. Just know like it is going to take a lot of work. Because even running a pre-made module, you know, there's a lot of work to do, because for each session, you're going to need to prepare for the parts of the adventure that your group's going to do. And the amount of preparation you need to do it's hard to, you know, recommend an exact amount because it depends. It depends on your group and it depends on you. Like if you're more of a fly by the seat of your pants person, you may not need to prep as much. If you're like me, you need to have, you know, every encounter planned out to the tiny detail and all of the names of every single NPC that ever appears, because you're worried that the group is going to ask you what, you know, the custodian in this bar's name is, and you're going to be like, I don't know. It's going to stress you out, so you need to know. So there's a large scale of prep, from a lot to not so much. But
I wrote 10,000 words before my first session as DM, so yeah. It's very.
Your players are going to throw that out the window anyway. So.
And then, you do all this prep, and then your group just does something crazy, and so, you know, keep in mind, even if you do all this prep, like, they're going to throw you a curveball, probably 5 curveballs, in your very first session. And it's going to take, you know, it's just going to take a while to get used to the back and forth that you have with your group. But still, if you have done your prep work and you know, you have a good framework of the adventure in your mind, you can better, you know, work with whatever curveballs your group throws at you. So,
yeah. I think it's just worth saying at this point, one of the most useful pieces of advice I ever saw for beginning D&D players was a set of, not rules, but advice for players on how to be generous to your DM, right? Mm-hmm. Anybody who tells you that D&D is a game where the players are competing against the GM, or like the two are at odds, that is totally incorrect. Right? The DM should be trying to help out the players, and the players should be trying to help out the DM. So yes, sometimes what you as a player want to do will run in a different direction from what the DM had planned, and often that's fine. It should be fine for everybody, but intentionally derailing the DM's plans, in ways that don't further the story and don't make it more fun for anybody else, is just being a jerk. So there's that side of it too.
Yes. And, you know, interpersonal problems are a lot of the issues that come up in dungeons. Like, you know, most people are fine about whatever happens in the story, but personal dynamics are what really can make or break a group. But as you know, as the DM, you are narrating the story to the player. So you are all of their senses at once. Like, so you get to tell them what they hear, see, smell, touch, and feel. So if you're using, you know, a pre-made adventure module when you're running the game, like as far as logistics of running the game, the pre-made modules will come with little boxes of descriptive text that you can read, and there'll be maps that are already drawn out. And then after you've kind of given your players this like seed of information, let them react to it. And this is where, you know, sometimes they'll do what you think they're going to do and sometimes they won't. But you basically try to help them get through the area by doing things like making skill checks, interacting with NPCs, or if they have questions, you know, how high is the ledge? Like, are you sure there's no light? Like, you know, anything like that. That's going to be the kind of information you're going to have to know and have to be able to come up with at some point. But again, like if they're asking something really bizarrely specific, you can always just kind of make a ruling and move on with it because you don't want to get too bogged down in those details. And as DM, you're also in charge of combat encounters. So that's why we kind of recommend doing some practice combat before you start if you've never played before, because combat can be slow, especially when you start and especially when everybody's playing new characters. So when a fight is ready to go, you will call for your players to make initiative rolls. It's your job to keep track of whose turn it is and to play the bad guys. And like Jane said before, even though you're playing the bad guys, it's not you versus them. Like, when you are running a game, some encounters should be easy, you know, good, you know, easy wins that make everybody feel good about themselves. Most of the encounters in your game should be a fairly even match, and some should be hard, you know. You don't want to be afraid to do damage to your players, or, you know, even to take them down to 0 HP, because in this game there are ways to come back. You know, the 0's not dead, so people can come back from, so don't be afraid to do that. But you don't want to be vindictive either. So, you know, especially, and that can be sometimes hard to do if somebody is getting under your skin a little bit, like you have to kind of step back and think about whether the action that you're taking is, you know, because this person's irritating you, or because, you know, their character is the tank, so of course your bad guy is going to attack them first, like, you know. And that's another thing you should, when you're running combats, you should think about the kind of enemy that you are playing in that encounter. So, you know, different types of enemies are going to have different kinds of tactics. So if you're playing like a feral animal in the forest, it might just attack anybody that's close. If you're attacking a group of bandits, they might be smart and change their targeting to hit the player who hits the hardest. So, you know, kind of keep that stuff in mind when you're running combats. And also, on a practical note, for combat especially, you'll have to decide if you want to do your rolling out in the open or behind a screen. Most DMs use screens because it gives them the option to influence the outcome of a situation a little bit beyond the dice, which are very unforgiving. And as a DM, you do have that power to fudge things, and it's a little controversial. You know, some DMs, you know, freely use that power, and some think it's a really terrible idea. But, you know, it's up to you, and you're going to have to use it wisely. An example of something where this might come up is if you have planned a combat encounter and it turns out to be way too hard, and you need to fudge the damage roll that a monster makes, you know, or you're going to kill somebody. If you make the adjustment behind the screen, your players won't know. But some people like that intensity and, you know, the like no going back that you get when you roll out in the open where everybody can see, and, you know, it's literally a roll of the dice of whether somebody lives or dies. So, you know, it's up to you if that's your kind of, you know, that's your kind of game or not. And finally, we kind of talked about this before, like if you're going to keep your game going for a long time, you want to make sure that you and your players are all expecting the same things. And this is kind of where those interpersonal dynamics come up again. So some D&D games are very serious and some are really funny. So how much side conversation do you want to be allowed? And especially now, like you want to maybe decide ahead of time if players are allowed to use their phones at the table. A lot of the conflicts that come up in groups are over these type of issues rather than something that happened in the story. So you want to kind of settle these things in advance. And additionally, as DM, you are kind of in the role of group leader, so a lot of people will kind of expect you to arbitrate especially if there's an issue between people. It's not always the best that people do expect you to arbitrate, but it does happen sometimes. And also, you will probably be the one in charge of scheduling. And you won't necessarily have fun every second of every session, but in general, your games should be fun and everybody should leave looking forward to the next one. So hopefully that doesn't scare you away from being a DM. It is hard, but it is really rewarding. So, give it a shot and see how things go. And I think we are next going to be talking about ways that you can run your game online, and Jane has that information.
Absolutely. Thank you, Julia.
Mm-hmm.
So whether you're an experienced player practicing social distancing or a brand new D&Der, if you're looking to play right now, it's probably online. As someone whose regular adventuring party is separated by an ocean and scattered across 7 hours worth of time zones, I'm here to confirm that playing TTRPGs online can be just as fun and exciting as playing in person. You may even want to keep using some of these online tools for in-person play because they add new functionality or just make things easier. For example, I have used Roll20 for in-person games as well as for online ones. Yes, and we will talk about that and a few other resources now. So let's start with D&D Beyond, which is the letters dndbeyond.com. That one's Wizard of the Coast's official site. To me, D&D Beyond is by far the easiest way to create and maintain a character. A free account will let you create up to 5 characters, and they're created through dynamic smart character sheets that make it easy to add a level. They make it easy to keep track of your hit points and your spell slots, to change your spells that you have prepared, reset after a rest, track your encumbrance, access your spell list, lots more stuff. So it can replace not only the physical piece of paper you use as a character sheet, but your spell cards and the manual. It really kind of does it all. It's not the most flexible system. It does struggle a little keeping up with the complexities of my level 14 barbarian turned cleric one-time half-orc who was enchanted into a part tiefling and cursed into a werewolf by a cute pair of boots.
And if you've never played before, that sentence makes no sense to you. Sorry to interrupt.
That is all good. Yes. So yeah, when you're trying to make it fit a character as weird and complicated as that one, it struggles a little bit. But for new players or new characters, D&D Beyond is a fantastic way to get through the building process quickly and accurately and let you get to the fun parts. They offer free accounts that let you build up to 5 characters of standard classes and races. But a full account is pretty affordable. I believe it's about $3 a month or $26 a year. And they actually encourage you to share one login with your whole party. So, if you get the whole party together and throw in $26 a year, that's pretty reasonable. And especially since it gives you access to some content from the manuals, and the manuals themselves can get pricey. Yes, so that account will allow you to build an unlimited amount of characters and unlock homebrew content. It's also worth knowing that Wizards of the Coast has been releasing tons of free content since the pandemic started, including some adventures that usually live behind a paywall, so it's definitely worth checking out even if you don't want to use the site to build characters. So if D&D Beyond is where you want to go for as a player, Roll20 is pretty much the same thing for DMs or GMs, since it's system agnostic and it's great for all kinds of other games as well. At its most basic, Roll20 is pretty much just a grid, a map that you can alter by importing images and music, scribbling all over it, or using some pretty sophisticated tools to create magical environments. A DM can use a Roll20 environment just to establish mood or convey information, or it can become a fully fledged map with tokens for characters, control of which can be shared with other players. One of my favorite features is the Fog of War, which is a system that allows parts of the map to be hidden from the players until the DM chooses to reveal them, which can be really fantastic for players who are exploring an unknown dungeon. In addition to providing an environment, Roll20 includes text chat, voice, and video features. While my group has found that the voice and video features are a little unreliable, and I will talk about another option in just a moment, the text chat does include another fun and useful feature. By typing in a command, you can roll dice in any quantity or number of sides and immediately see the sum that results. It's a lifesaver if you don't have your dice on you, or if you've just landed a huge hit that requires rolling a ton of dice at once. So if you're a wizard and have to roll, you know, like 13d10 because you just hit a giant thunderbolt, it's way, way easier to let it do the math for you. Roll20 also offers paid accounts, but a free version honestly should give you everything you need, especially if you're just getting started. And once you get a feel for the tools, the tutorial is very helpful if a little bit overly long. You'll find lots of other uses for it too. My group regularly uses it for One Night Ultimate Werewolf and other card games, as well as D&D. So finally, the last barrier for playing across distance is communication. Any group chat app like Skype or Zoom will work, but most of the D&D groups I know, including mine, use Discord. It's free, and the multiple chat channels make it easy and convenient to not only chat during a session, but leave messages anytime about scheduling, communicate secret information from the DM that only certain characters can know, share images and stats, and more. Plus, the app version works just as reliably and has just as much functionality as the full-scale desktop version. So get your party using it regularly, and I imagine it'll become your hub for more than just D&D chat. My group's Animal Crossing chat has facilitated many fossil trades over the past few weeks. So yeah, that's it. Those are the three tools I'd like to recommend. With D&D Beyond to build your character, Roll20 for maps and dice, and Discord to keep everyone in touch. It's really easy to get started or to make the leap from in-person to digital play. Do you guys have any other digital tools that you guys have used?
I wanted to add just to highlight a couple of things that Jane mentioned about using Roll20. I pulled up a campaign that I'm running right now with some of my teams from the library, and I wanted to show you some of how, you know, the maps worked and moving tokens around and how you would do initiative in a combat scenario and things like that. I thought that might be helpful to get a visual of that. So I'm going to share my screen here.
Sounds wonderful.
So are you guys seeing my window here?
Yes,
Yep.
we are.
Okay. So what I've got going here is in our current campaign, we are doing, mine's just gone completely blank all of a sudden. We are doing Tomb of Annihilation. Dun, dun, dun. So I pulled up a map of one of the merchant prince's homes. This is actually from earlier in our storyline where they were visiting with the merchant princes, and I put some tokens on here so you can kind of see, and you're seeing this from the DM's left side here. So I can do a few things that the players can't, but you can control your own token and move them around. There are options to add, you know, to edit the token itself, as well as if you click on this little one right here, you can change, you know, if your condition changes. I mean, if you're dead, you can put a big X over yourself. If you've been poisoned, so you can change little symbols based on what your status is in the game. You can also, if it's time for initiative, there's a little sidebar over here that the DM can use, and you can click on this thing that looks like a little stopwatch, and you get a turn order tracker here. And it looks like I still got a couple people up from last time, but you can add everybody to this turn order, and then they can roll to see in what order they go in the initiative, and you can put their numbers in there and get them in order. And then you've got a really handy turn tracker that, you know, one person goes, you can click the little arrow and it's going to move right up to the next person, so you know whose turn it is at any point in combat. There's also a little dice roller over here if you want to use that. It can do some pretty fancy stuff. It's kind of annoying to me, so I usually just roll my dice in the chat window here. Or you can roll actual physical dice still if everyone's got a set at home. So yeah, there's different maps that you can move back and forth with depending on, you know, if you purchase a campaign to use in this, or you can create your own to use, or find free ones online that you can upload and use and snap everything to the grid and map out so everyone knows where they are in relation to everyone else and their surroundings. So there's a lot of really cool things that you can do. That's just a real quick sampling of using Roll20 to play. So I thought I'd share that with you guys real quick. Did you have anything to add while I've got it up and open here, either of you?
Oh, just that my favorite thing about Roll20 as a DM is not having to draw maps for my players anymore.
Yay, it's very nice. I have a map that I've drawn on for actual games, but now I just use Roll20, yeah, even when we're meeting in person, because it's so much easier. You also have this cool thing called Fog of War, which the DM can do. I don't have it on right now, but then I could hide a bunch of the map. I would still see it, but my players won't see it until it is revealed to them. So if they were just entering this building, I would have the whole thing covered and they wouldn't know where anything was.
Basically, there's a thing in D&D, in Roll20, sorry, called layers, right? So you've got the DM layer that shows everything, or GM layer, they call it, right?
Yep.
Then you've got a, the objects and tokens. So that's the layer that players see where their tokens are that they're moving around. And then you can have a GM info overlay with more secret stuff. So, so yes, you've got several different layers of data, and the players can only see one layer, but the GM can hide some secrets on the other layers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's all kinds of secrets you can have as a DM. There is also a way to roll, if you don't have actual dice and you're the DM and you want to keep your roll secret, there is a way to do that as well in the chat. So only you see the rolls.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not using something like Discord or something, you can also chat privately between people using, they call them whispers. So yeah, read the various FAQs on Roll20 and watch their little tutorial, and that'll help you out a lot.
Again, the tutorial is long. It'll take you a while. Like, don't expect
Shouldn't have said little tutorial. Yeah.
D&D Beyond, you really can get like started immediately. Roll20 is going to take you a little bit of poking around and playing to get a handle on how it works. But the tutorial is very clear. Like it's clear and comprehensive. It's just time consuming.
Yes, there's a lot you can do with Roll20. It does take time to get set up, but a lot of times once you get the thing set up, you can, if you take the time to set your stuff up properly, the game can go even faster. So like you've got your character, as a player, if you've got your character sheet properly put together, you can just click on your attack in the character sheet and it will roll it for you. You can also do something that's called macros, where you set up special rolls for yourself. And you can have them set as like a fill in the blank. So you can have your character like emote what they're going to do all the time, every time you roll. So, you know, like instead of just clicking on, you know, the quarterstaff in your character sheet, if you had like a macro set up with you can put in a little blank in the macro where you can fill in your target, so that, you know, you can set, just instead of just saying quarterstaff attack, like it'll say, you know, so-and-so, which character is this? Nicholas swings his quarterstaff at the, you know, gargoyle. And it's a little bit more, you know, in the story rather than just, you know, hit damage, move on.
So he just rolled to use his quarterstaff there, or that's the damage roll for his quarterstaff. So, because I clicked on it in his character sheet.
Nice.
So yeah.
So that was Roll20, and that's our basic guide to DMing and how to take your games online.
Yeah, thank you all for watching and listening, and I hope you have fun getting a game started.
Enjoy playing, guys.